Hi folks. On this video what we're going to talk about are Punnett squares, both autosomal crosses and sex-linked crosses. So one thing to note in an autosomal cross is that it happens on the first 22 chromosomes, so 1 through 22. And so these chromosomes are going to be responsible for the building and repairing of the body. Okay? So when we create a Punnett square, these steps are here if you want to pause the video, but I'm going to move forward on to the next slide, and I'm just going to show you those steps essentially as I discuss them here. Okay, so basically what's going to happen now is we are going to draw a square as outlined like this. Now this is asking us to cross a heterozygous father, and so the father is going to go over here on the side, and the mother will go here on the top. Okay, so we're going to show the heterozygous father and a heterozygous mother. So if you take a look here, this is dominant, that is recessive. This is dominant, that is recessive. Okay, so now what happens is we are going to put these together. So I would take this dominant allele, always put the dominant first, and I would take that dominant allele there. I would take this dominant allele here, and I would take that little recessive allele. Sorry, my writing sucks. Anyways, you get the point. So I take one, this big uppercase P dominant allele would go there, and then that recessive allele would go there. And then these two little recessive alleles would go there. So if I was to talk about this, this would be homozygous recessive. These two here would be heterozygous, so carriers, so the trait wouldn't show if it was purple flowers. And these ones here would be homozygous dominant. Okay, and you see that same pairing just in a nicer form over here, one that you can understand and see, but mine has more colors, so it's better. Anyways, so then we talked about genotypes and phenotypes. So again, remember, a genotype are the alleles. So we are showing these alleles right here. Okay, so those are the alleles: homozygous dominant, heterozygous, and homozygous recessive. So in this case, 25% or 1 in 4 are going to be heterozygous or homozygous recessive, and they're going to have white flowers. But we're not worrying about that with the genotype. 1 out of 2 or 2 out of 4 are going, or 50% are going to be heterozygous. Okay, and then 1 out of 4 or 25% are going to be homozygous dominant, those two big uppercase P's, and they're going to have purple flowers. But the phenotypes are the physical traits that show. So these are letters, remember, genotype is letters, and that's awful, and phenotypes are words. Oh yeah. Okay, so anyways, 75% of these, because the heterozygous and the homozygous dominant are all going to create purple flowers. So that word words is in the way, but the purple, 75% are going to be purple flowers, whereas 25% are going to be homozygous recessive, but they are going to produce white flowers. So the phenotypes would say purple flowers or white flowers, and the genotypes would say would be the letters, the homozygous dominant, heterozygous, or homozygous recessive. Does that make sense? I hope so. But there are other types of Punnett squares. So we have talked about how the sex of a person is determined. So what's important here is that we understand that men have an X and a Y, and women or females have two X's. Now, how is the sex determined? Well, basically what's going to happen is the sperm and the egg, and the sperm is going to contain the Y chromosome and the egg is going to contain the X chromosome. But basically what's going to happen is there might be a sperm containing X, and it will also have the Y. But the thing is, when they're actually paired together, I'll show you a Punnett square. the sex of the individual once the egg is fertilized is going to be determined. So I will just show you on my next slide here how that happens, and it'll make more sense when I do that. So if you take a look here, sex is determined if I have the egg, okay? So if I have the reproductive cell in an ovary at 2N, and I have my eggs in my female, my X chromosome and my X chromosome, just remember that is a female. And then if I look over here, the X and the Y is a male, okay, and that's from my testes. And so my X and my X and my X and my Y, when I put these together, what I actually get are two females. So these would be females, and these would be males, because males have the Y chromosome, X and a Y, and females have two X's. Does that make sense? So at that point, it's a 50-50 chance that you will either be a male or you'll be a female. Okay. So hopefully that's clear. So I'm just going to show you one more type of Punnett square here, and this one sometimes gives people a little bit of problems because it's a little different, obviously, than the autosomal, and you'll see what I mean. So this is called an X-linked cross or a sex-linked cross. Okay, so this is going to occur on the 23rd chromosome. Okay, so it's on the 23rd chromosomal pairing. So that is where it's XX in women and XY in men. So it's going to affect that. So one example is color blindness. So color blindness affects men more than it does women. So one thing to note that's really important is this Y chromosome, alleles, genes don't attach to that. So there are no alleles that attach. So if you take a look in this, notice that right up here, there's nothing attached. Okay, it will never attach to the Y chromosome, whereas look over here, these X chromosomes, they are attached. There are alleles attached and genes attached to that. Two dominant ones in that case. This one, notice there is one attached, but this Y chromosome, absolutely not. So when we cross this in a sex-linked or an X-linked cross, we are going to have to split these up. So we still make our window, our square with our 4 squares, and remember inside are our offspring. But now in this case, we are going to split these up as well. So notice that this man is colorblind, okay? And this woman has full vision. So now she is homozygous dominant because she has 2 big ends, and this male is, well, I guess he's going to be colorblind as a phenotype because either he has it or he doesn't. Okay, so in this case, if you look here, this cross is going to produce a carrier, full vision, color vision, but carries the allele right there, the carrier of the X-linked trait for colorblindness. Same thing right here, also a carrier, and you can see that in this description here, but still has full vision. Now, if you look at the sun, where this dominant allele and this X chromosome is then combined with the Y, they're going to both produce sons that have full vision. So though the male or the man or the father has color blindness here, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to produce individuals with color blindness. But you did produce 2 carriers that in the future could pass it along to their children. Okay, but in this case, the trait is going to be primarily, it's more common in men because nothing attaches to this Y chromosome. And that's really important to note, okay? Excuse me. So that's Punnett Squares, sex-linked versus autosomal crosses. I'm going to talk more about it in a different video when we talk about some genetic disorders. Okay, hopefully that's helped. Thanks.